What are the steps that we could follow to accomplish our dreams? That's the topic we're going to be addressing today on Flourish-Meant. I'm your host, Tina Yeager. Flourish-Meant is sponsored by Access More. Today, I am blessed to have and share with you a wonderful guest, an amazing woman who has done tons of entrepreneurial work and is a mighty woman of God. Her name is Victoria Duerstock, and she is an author, a speaker, and owner of the new publishing house, relatively new anyway, Endgame Press, and she does amazing work. You should check out her books. They are beautiful. And the one that she is going to be discussing at the end of each segment today is her new book, The Story of Good, which is a gorgeous coffee table worthy book. Welcome, Vicki. I am so glad to have you on the show today and to be able to feature you.
Tina, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
And in this second part of our conversation with Victoria Duerstock, I want to dive into some ways that we can do a little bit of coaching with those of you who are in the audience who might be wondering how you can take steps to accomplish your dreams. Vicki, I kind of want to start with speaking directly to that audience member who might be struggling with fear. Have you ever struggled with that paralyzing fear? How do I move forward? Should I do this or should I not do this? I'm kind of suspecting you have a way to get past it because you wouldn't be so successful if you didn't.
I wish I could say I didn't struggle with fear. I think that the mantra really at this stage of my life is to do it anyway. And I say often that this business, authoring, writing books, promoting books, and publishing now on this side of things is doing it while afraid. It really has nothing to do with getting rid of the fear. It's doing it in spite of the fear, knowing that because I know it at my very core that God has this. This is God's work that he's doing and he's allowing me to be part of. And those times where I start to fear, is this going to fail? Is this going to make it? Are we just one and done? Or are we going to be here long term, which is the goal, obviously, to have this long term, not for a legacy for us, but just a business that's going to impact and make a difference for a long time. So my goals are, to stay at it for a long time. But because I believe just in the very core of my heart that God's the one that's doing all of this in spite of me, with me, through me, then I can continue to just take steps forward, even when they're kind of big and they're terrifying. So often I say it's very exciting and terrifying at the same time. I feel like that's the stage of life I am in currently.
It sounds like you're defining courage, which comes from the Latin for your heart, the core, the heart, and doing it anyway is having the heart to do something when you're afraid, or even perhaps when you're discouraged. Discouragement is a huge piece of the writing industry and of any business, really, especially those that are entrepreneurs or people following any sort of dream or ministry that God may be calling them to right now. How do people get past discouragement? Is it that same do it anyway, or are there some other things that you need to call upon to overcome discouragement?
I think often, and perhaps this is even a creative's issue as well, is when things are a little challenging or difficult or discouraging, our tendency is just to quit. Like it shouldn't be this hard, and I think often in Christian ministry, we feel that even more, if this is this hard, why am I doing this? This must be wrong. I remember even teaching music for all those years. My daughter, especially, I tried to teach her for a little while and her thing was, well, I didn't have it right away. We had to practice, right? Like that was the key in order to be able to get better was practice was required. It didn't mean that you were bad at piano. It just meant that you needed more practice before you were good at it. And I think that often, business decisions or writing a book or editing, which I definitely is not my favorite thing. All those red lines, like, how did you not understand what I was trying to say? These things are hard and discouraging, but it means we need more practice or we need to do it some more, or maybe sometimes we do have to move in a different direction. But discouragement, often I think we feel like we should quit or we shouldn't do this anymore, when in fact we might just need a nap or a piece of chocolate. We have to take a break. And I don't think we often will allow ourselves that day of rest, or so to speak, or a nap when we would feel better and more ready to take on the battle.
Now, you are a wonderful leader and you're a visionary, but how important is it to have a community of really strong people around you when you're endeavoring to follow the dreams that God's created you for?
It's vital. And this is probably part of the growth process for me in the last few years, has been that I didn't have to be this individual solo working alone. And I have for so long. And a part of that is, again, that only child, doesn't work in a group well mentality. And mostly that was just because I knew what I was capable of and I could trust myself to get certain things done. But the reality is, if I'm trying to grow a business that's going to be sustainable and long term, if it rests on just what I'm capable of and getting accomplished, then it's a very small vision. And God continues to reveal to me that having that team around is going to help put their best features, their best things that they're capable of bringing to the table. And they're going to help me in the things that I'm not very good at. They're going to be able to help build a really good business that's going to be there for the long term. It's like writing a book. We have to have editors that are better at things than we are. It's bringing the right people to the table to do layouts and cover design and all the different pieces of the puzzle. Could I do all of those things? Potentially. But could I do them all well at the same time? Probably not. I need other people to come in that process and support it. And I think that that's the same, whether we're talking about writing books, starting a business, being an entrepreneur. We need all of the team, to be all part of it together.
What were some of the things that stood out when you interviewed the entrepreneurs that were seeking these big dream ideas for Good Market and other businesses like that? What were the things that stood out as key to being able to take steps to follow your dreams?
I loved this part of the process. I actually thought that this book might have been a little bit more challenging to write because I thought so many of their stories might be very similar and I would have to find a really unique way to present them. But each person, each founder had a little bit something different that happened to them. And the core of what happened was they wanted to help somebody, whether the experience had been overseas where they saw a people that needed a way to earn finance in order to be able to feed their family. Or if it was here in the US, it was something where a cause that had happened to them personally, and they wanted to make a difference for people in the future. They couldn't affect anything on that particular instance in that way, whether it was addiction or homelessness, what these causes, mental health challenges, they couldn't necessarily affect it today, but maybe they could do something for somebody else's family in the future. And I think that that was the most beautiful part of it, was hearing how each one of them in a different way thought, how could I help that one person or that group of people today without this big plan? There was no big business plan. It was really, how could I help in some small way? And then the fruit of that was this momentum that built and this business that built around it, and the vision that they had for, well, if we could do this, then we could potentially do this if enough people got excited about helping. And I think that that's been the beauty of being able to tell these stories.
That threads itself back to what we talked about at the beginning when you were saying that you felt like you were just following God, that you had a passion put in your heart. And that was something that was key to discerning what your next part of your dream is. We don't always just have one dream, but the next part of the dream is having that passion that God put inside of you and making that bigger than just serving your own needs. Where
Absolutely.
is your why, as Michael Hyatt says?
Yes,
So that's got to be a big key to following your dreams, right?
I think so. It's always bigger than us, especially if we'll allow it to be. Many of the people that I got to talk to in our book, The Story of Good, are faith based. They're believers. They're not leading necessarily in the marketplace with their Christian viewpoint. They're leading with wanting to do good. And it was fascinating to talk to them because of their faith story also was a big part of why they're doing what they're doing. It's motivating them, it's getting them out there to do that. But also they just saw a need to help people, and they figured that the one thing that they could do, they could help with their one thing. And I think that that's the beauty, is when we realize we may not be able to help everyone, but we can help someone. And when we help that one, we can help so many more. It's the legend of the starfish. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but that's actually was shared with me a decade ago in the Dominican Republic, because it was so overwhelming, the work that they were doing. And Joy, the founder of New Hope Girls, shared with me the legend of the starfish, and I have never forgotten it, because it made a great impact on me.
I love that story. We used to tell that story at a teen retreat that I used to volunteer with. And that was the story. If two people were walking along and one kept throwing a starfish back because so many had been washed up on shore, the other one said, "You can't save them all." And the person who was throwing them back said, "No, but I can save this one."
That's
And
right.
that is kind of what you're referring to. We can always help the next person put in front of us. So that might be another key to discerning your next step, is who is right there that you could possibly help right now. And that may be the next step in your story, even if you don't know the whole path. We often don't know the whole path, do we?
No, that would be nice if we could see the big picture and know exactly where we're headed. But I think that that's also the beauty, is we would maybe panic. We would maybe shrink back and decide not to help if we knew what the big picture really was. So I think sometimes we have the light for the path that we need.
I've also heard you say a little bit throughout that you're both very creative and yet very organized. And some people have a hard time being able to bounce back and forth. How would you advise people to do that work of being a creative and being organized, and kind of balancing the time that you spend on each of those? Any advice about that?
I wish I had that one down perfectly. I have struggled in the last couple of years, really finding that creative time, because there have been so many tasks that have needed to take place. And as a matter of fact, in the last year, I've even wrestled with the Lord if I'm still supposed to continue trying to write, because it is getting more difficult in these days. And yet I don't feel like that has been taken off my plate at this stage. So I'm working to protect those creative hours. I know there are certain hours in my day where I'm a little bit more creative, and I should not be answering emails during those hours. If I answer emails during those hours, then the creativity has gone for the day, and I have to fill that well back up again later on another day. So I try really hard, if I can, to put it on my calendar, and protect those hours. Many times for me, that's first thing in the morning after I have my coffee and my quiet time. My next couple of hours of the day, my brain is the most awake and the most active. So I try as much as I can, even though there are those pressures and those things that do sometimes have to break through and have to be taken care of. If I can spend 3 days a week, even protecting a couple of hours in the morning to still be creative, that's the goal. And that's what I'm working on trying to do.
And if you're listening and you don't happen to feel as though your dream is necessarily in that creative, that traditional creative space like music or art or writing, you might still need to protect that space of time when you're casting vision, when you're meditating and you're spending your spiritual time with God for his direction, or some of those other things. So you need to know when you're most open to that kind of a process in that part of your brain, as
Mm.
opposed to that didactic linear process where you're doing organizational skill time. So just knowing when your brain is optimized for certain types of tasks and when you are better off doing other types of tasks, and kind of playing that out. That's really great advice. And I know that you have a wealth of other things to offer those who are listening, both of your own on your website and through your books, and through your company, Endgame Press. So tell people how they can stay connected with you and with all of the books that you provide, those beautiful coffee table worthy books from Endgame Press.
Thank you, Tina, again for the opportunity to talk with you today and share. And I do hope it's an encouragement for your listeners. Endgame Press has its own dedicated website. and social media. So we would love to see you on Instagram or Facebook. We're working on our Pinterest. We'll get there one thing at a time. But Endgame Press is our location. And then my name, victoriaduerstock.com, or heartandhomebooks.com is also another area where you can connect with me. The Story of Good has its own website. We continue to build that out as well. We want to continue to send people to these places to support these businesses, to know more about them, to know about the good that's actually happening in the world today, because there is so many things that can overwhelm us and discourage us. The Story of Good is one of those that can inspire and encourage.
I hope that all of you listening were inspired and encouraged by Victoria Duerstock's conversation with us today. And I hope that you will check out her books as well as all of those provided by Endgame Press. And of course, I also hope that you come back for the next episode of Flourish-Meant.